Greetings to all of humanity. It's really a joy, it's a pleasure as usual to be out here in nature and bringing this message of emancipation to you, always pointing you to look inwardly to discover your identity, to be your divinity. And as usual, I always teach that the Bible addresses the human mind and must be interpreted psychologically, that the Bible is not literal, neither is it secular history. That's the reason why I want to speak to you today concerning how Abdullah taught Neville Goddard and how Neville referred to the style or the way in which Abdullah taught him the most important lessons of life. He termed it as rudeness. By his rudeness. And Neville said by Abdullah's rudeness, he learned so much. And I am speaking on this subject to show you that there's no specific way that anyone can say this way is the way to reach someone or to reach humanity, but most of all is to be led by your intuition. And when you've been led by your intuition will tell you what to do, what to say, how to act. And so Neville, who was actually battling doubt, fear, unbelief, and all the other things that limit us, in order for Abdullah to cut those things away from Neville's mentality, he had to act in a way that seems to be rude, crude, or a little bit harsh. But he was teaching him how to be a man, how to stand firm, how to believe in himself, how to trust his own human imagination as the creator in man. So in order for him to teach him, in order for Abdullah, I should say, to teach Neville this important lesson, he had to make it more practical than theory, because Neville was learning from Abdullah and studying with Abdullah for 5 years. But when it comes to the practical, this is where Abdullah had to act a certain kind of way to get him to think, to provoke his mind, like slamming the door in his face when he was speaking about traveling third class, when Abdullah would have already affirmed that he would travel first class and would have already gone to Barbados. And he was reassuring him that creation is finished, that everything is already here, that everything has already taken place. All you have to do is get into the right vibrational frequency, and then it will become your reality. So my brother and my sisters, do not allow society interpretation of morality and society interpretation of what is right and wrong. Do not allow that to get into your psyche, because when you allow those kind of teachings to get into your psyche, they're actually having you eating from the tree and knowledge of good and evil. But when you see everything has been done based on one's mentality or their state of consciousness, you come to realize that there's no right and that there's no wrong. You just think and make it so. And that each and every one of us is on a different level of consciousness. So a person would act based on the level of consciousness that they are on. So we have to understand life and how life works. And that's what it means to eat from the tree of life. So, as I was saying concerning Abdullah and his actions, whereby Neville said is as though Abdullah was angry now that he was going to Barbados. He expect Abdullah to be smiling, laughing, and be joyful. But Abdullah knew that with great power comes great responsibility. And he realized that he was placing great responsibility upon a young man who was now learning how to operate in his creativity so that he can bring a message to the rest of humanity that would be of value to all of humanity. Thus the reason why I always say that genuine love is corrective, because Abdullah was showing Neville the other side of love. He was showing him that calm side of love. Sometimes I refer to that as the lamb anointing, where he's so nice and so quiet, like a lamb. And then when he slams the door and he shows what some might term as, say, resentment or tough love, that's what I refer to as the lion anointing. But as long as it's been done with the motive or with the intention or in the mindset of love, it all brings balance. You know, sometimes you might be speaking to someone and you might be led to speak to that one in a very nice, calm way. Not because you want to try to be nice, but because you've been led to act that way. And on the other side too, you might act harshly to someone, not because you want to bring them down, not because you want to shame them, but because at that time you are moved to act that way, and you might feel bad within yourself, and then you realize sometime later how much that person really appreciates you. I remember Neville spoke about a guy who refused another guy money when he asked him for money, and he refused to give him. But when he left him, he saw him being in a place of affluence in his mind's eye. See him having a job and all of that. And sometime later, that guy came back and told this guy that he was very much glad and pleased that he didn't give him the money. Because if he would have given him the money, he would not have felt the way he would have felt that really pushed him to go and get a job. He felt so bad that he felt led to just go and get a job, and he was fully employed. But when he refused to give him the money, he was doing it out of love. Because if you give someone a fish, they would all look to you for a fish. But if you teach them how to fish, then they will know how to fish. I've heard a motivational speaker by the name of E.T. always refer to a story whereby he normally says, if you see him beating up an old woman, you might say, why is he abusing that old woman, and why is he beating up that woman? What kind of man is he? He's no man. He's this, he's that, and so on. But if afterwards you get to find out that that old woman would have just murdered that man's wife and his children, then you turn around and say, well, he wasn't even beating her enough. You turn around and say, well, he should have killed her. You understand? So, you see, my brother, my sisters, when we come to that place of discovering our higher self and knowing who we are, we'll also discover that really and truly, where society teaches that something is right and something is wrong, it is actually thinking that really makes it so. But we are to dwell in a place whereby we understand the different level of consciousness, the different level of awareness. Because for Abdullah, his action was teaching. To someone else who was on a lower level of consciousness, to them that was shaming, that was embarrassing, that was being partial, slamming the door in someone's face. They might interpret as discrimination. Especially Abdullah and Neville Goddard were of a different race because they taught us to believe in race. But I believe in the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Therefore, I believe the only race there is the human race. Not everyone believes that. And the reason why I say what I've just said, it is because all of us have to breathe in and breathe out. And when that breath leaves every one of us, we goes into a place of transformation, a place we call death. And all of us have to use the mind. Therefore, they have to be one mind. And all of us have to use our imagination to create our reality. Therefore, it tells me that there's only oneness. And that there's only one God, one creator, and there's only one creative power. And that one creative power is the power of imagining. So with all of that, Mr. My brother, my sister, the main point I want to get across to you is how Abdullah taught Neville, and Neville referred to him to the way that style of teaching him how to operate in the practical as his rudeness. And he actually embraced Abdullah's rudeness because he learned more from Abdullah when Abdullah acted that way towards him. And he relaxed and think and ask himself, why would he act that way? What is he trying to teach me in acting that way? He find even more value in Abdullah's rudeness, teaching him to discover his higher self so that he can bring this message to all of humanity, pointing them to look inwardly to discover their true identity, to be their divinity. So with that, Mr. My brother, my sister, I want to thank you very much. And I want to say to you that there are things that I might say that you would agree and things you might not agree. But it all have to do with how you receive this message of self-realization. Now, I just want to remind you that this message I bring to you, it is the single-eye message of self-realization, of which Matthew 6:22 teaches us that if your eye be single, your whole body would be full of light. And had it been I would have had that experience, whereby I would have awakened within myself like a fiery being, having heard the unearthly wind and ascended up on high, and exit my skull in another form and became invisible, I would not have been here teaching you how to trust the invisible, how to be loyal to the unseen, how to act in faith, how to believe in yourself. That's the reason why I always put my hand on my crown chakra and giving you a symbol of the single eye, because that single eye opened within me. And that's why I know that this life is a dream and you have to awake out of the dream. And that's how I come to know also, whereby it is said that you shall change from mortal to immortality in a twinkling of an eye. That twinkling of an eye is a closed eye being opened. That's the reason why I now give you the sign and saying to you that when you have the experience, you will come to realize that it is the rising of the S-U-N in a S-O-N, and that it is the dawning of a new day in your life. That's the reason why I always say to you that the sun parallels the human imagination and the human imagination parallels the sun. For without the sun there is no life and there is no light. And without the human imagination there isn't anything made that was made. And the Bible refers to the sun as in the S-U-N, as God in Psalms 84:11, and says that is a shield and no good thing will he withhold from you. And also in Malachi 4:2 it says that the sun, as in the S-U-N, of righteousness shall arise in you with healing in his wings. That's the reason why I bring this message of true inner healing to you, encouraging you to use your mind power, which is your solar power, your creative power, your God power, to achieve your every desire. Doesn't matter how it's been taught to you by your teacher. With that being said, I want to say peace, love you all, out.